Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Stranger Things Season 5, Episode 2. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Immediately picking up where the last episode left off, Holly is trying to run from her life, trying to get away from the Demogorgon as it's trying to drag her through. Manages to slip away. Her mom's taking a bath. Her dad's outside golfing. Luckily, she gets to her mom in time, but I was like, oh man, she's going to go check. Her mom's going to think she's crazy and stuff like that. And it's going to, I was like, oh, it's just all going to go wrong. But it's following after her and it's banging on her door. I was like, oh God, this is bad. I thought it was some good thinking, like hiding in the tub. But I was like, eventually this thing's going to search everywhere. But Ted comes inside because he saw the flickering lights, comes in, and he has a golf club. I was like, oh God, is Ted about to bite it? I was like, no way. And Ted lands in some good blows, but then like we see the Demogorgon sliced him up when he got flung through the wall. You're like, oh boy, he's bleeding bad. And Karen takes off with Holly, but once again, you're dealing with something that can rip open a portal to the upside down and get ahead of you and pop out playing a game of Portal. And what does Karen do? Stay away from my daughter. Breaks the wine bottle, and she start going in. Stab, stab, stab. By the time my Elle and Nancy got there, she came across that scene. I was like, yo, are we really about to kill Karen? I'm like, that's crazy. And just seeing her mom, because like Karen's like stomach got slashed and her throat. You're just like, Jesus. And she's just there, pool of blood, and saying like, Holly, and they see the portal closing, and Elle follows suit. Obviously, she's there to take care of her mom. Obviously, we cut to them in the hospital. They had to put their Ted into a medically induced coma, or maybe he's just naturally in a coma, but I think they specifically put him in a coma. And obviously, they're working on her mom. Like, I think they were, maybe it's her, maybe it's Ted, like probably both of them, fractured ribs or stuff like that. And obviously, Nancy's blaming herself. She's kind of blaming all of this because she's like, we hadn't found Vecna until now. She's like, we should have gotten him immediately out of town. We should have at least told them the truth. And it's like, because truth be told, is Mike and all of them thought they can handle this. The less people, because it's like, right, because if they tell people the truth, it's like you have to go through the rigmarole of trying to explain it all. But it's like, obviously Nancy's just like, she's upset with herself and just all this whole situation of just like, we should have handled this better. It's on us. We should have done a better job looking after mom, dad, and even Holly. It's like she, and because especially Nancy's beating herself up. She's like, Vecna told me what he was going to do. He showed me a dead mom, dad, and Holly, and he's just torturing us because we got in the way of his plans. He's just trying to punish us. But it's actually Lucas like, I'm getting deja vu here. He's like, Vecna, if he, like, this isn't just about punishing you guys. If he really wanted to, the best punishment would have killed your parents and killed Holly and left her for you to find. The fact of the matter is, he took Holly, like, he left the job unfinished. And for him, it's like, this reminds me of when the day that Will disappeared, the day everything changed. He's like, it's November 3rd. Will disappeared on November 6th. He's like, I don't believe in coincidences anymore. It's so interesting, too, because thinking about that, everyone had their theories on what, I'm sure they were out there, but the episode title when it was initially like revealed is just like the vanishing of ellipses, and the moment like keeping that in mind, I'm like, it's got to be Holly, right? And it is. It's the vanishing of Holly Wheeler, but it's like, yeah, the parallels between that and Will. It's like, but why? I'll kind of throw out my theories later on as I kind of get into the recording about like how the episode broke down, but still. The question is still, like, at the time, it's like, well, why Holly? Why go through all of this? Like, what's so special about Holly? Because even Mike was like, Holly, who's literally never been involved in any of this. Like, sure, if it was one of us involved in it, makes total sense. We've always been a thorn in his side. But, like Holly has never had any correlation or connection to all of this other than just being related to me and Nancy. And, that's the only correlation and connection, so. I'm going to flip over to the upside down just to kind of knock that whole element out. But we have Elle eventually running into Hopper and kind of filling him in on everything. And obviously it turns out that the Demogorgon is wounded. Like, Karen got some work in. I was almost like, yo, we're not gonna make it so that Karen. It was like, of course, the Demogorgon's not gonna go down that easy. I mean, hell, it takes like Hopper had to like burn it and like decapitate it to kind of finally put it down last season. It's like, yeah, this was like the big bad of season 1, but now it's it's a mini boss that most people won't be able to take down on their own. Without the right circumstances. But yeah, this thing is heavily wounded and it's got to deal with Holly as well. So, and obviously it leads to this back and forth between Elle and her, Hopper, because, well, how did you get to the Wheeler house? It's like, well, we drove. And it's like, I had my hoodie up, but it's like, no, the military is going to find you. And they ultimately do. They pull up like security footage and see Elle in the, car. So it's like, yeah, exactly what Hopper was afraid of did happen. But obviously they were on a time restraint. Like, we needed to get to the Wheeler house immediately. We didn't have time to like take the slow and safe route. We had to go fast and risky. And it's this whole thing about like, right, he's like, I taught you not to be basing things on emotion. And she's like, I'm not. I'm basing this on instinct. But the funny thing is, because he's talking to Elle, who is essentially, in all intents and purpose, has become a younger version of him. I mean, I'm sure that's also the element of like, he knows like if Sarah was still alive, she'd be Elle. She'd adopt his stubbornness. Obviously, they talk about it later on, stubborn punk assness. But it's just because he sees so much of himself in Elle, but it's like, yeah, you're a hypocrite too, because you are driven by emotion, because your overprotective father instincts are stopping you. It's not like you're driven by logic, like you're being driven by emotion too. Like everyone is. Everyone's heightened, everyone's scared, everyone's worried. And so ultimately 11 finds out about the bullet wound and stops and patches him up. It's like, how'd you learn that? She's like, Max. And it's like, I'd assume that's from last season. No, not last season. Sorry, season 3, when they were all like patching her up after like the Mind Flayer. Well, like the goopy version that came into this the real world, the fleshy one, ended up like biting into her, like, and they had to treat her wounds. So I'm assuming that's where 11 kind of learned some of that. But there's like this very nice heart to heart that her and Hopper had, because Hopper talks about like, obviously, like, he didn't get along with his dad, like there's a big blowout and it led to his dad signing him up for the military, hoping it would straighten him out. But he went to war, he lost a lot of good friends, and they were brave. They were bravest people he knows. But it's like, that line between bravery and stupidity is very thin, and it's just kind of like he doesn't want to see 11 like be stubborn and go so far ahead and just ends up like getting killed. Obviously that's his biggest concern. And he talks about Sarah. It's like, Sarah, he's like, the doctors couldn't even imagine, like, she was so brave, she faced death head on, and they actually expected her to get better, but ultimately she died. And even 11's like, is that what you're worried about, that I will die, like Vecna will win and I'll die? He's like, I don't know. But he's like, I've lived long enough to know that, like, basically nothing in life is guaranteed, and so he doesn't know what this, because I forgot to talk about this last episode, because 11's also got in her head what Mike was talking about, the happily ever after, which immediately you're like, ooh, there we go, planting all the death flags as possible. And so she's got that in her head, and now her dad being like maybe pessimistic, but trying to be realistic, to know like life doesn't always go the way any of us want it to, or expect it to, or need it to. It goes the way it goes, and we can't expect anything, we can't take anything for granted. So it's a situation we have to kind of take things as is and be, prepared. And it's just like, for him, it's like, I don't want to lose you. In fact, he's like, I'm not going to lose you. Whatever we do, whatever happens going forward, where we follow this blood, we go together, and like, I'm going to like lead the charge. So they continue after Holly and following the blood, and they find a giant wall. And I'm like, is this Vecna making, like, I wonder, is this like him, like, because we do see like what looks like little boils that look like they could be like little sacks for like Demogorgons, which I'm like, is he amassing his army? Is that what that wall looks like? At first I was almost like, is it going to be a fortress? But like, it kind of almost reminded me a little bit, just the little boils we saw that seemed like there was stuff inside. I'm like, is that supposed to be like the pods people are in? It's like in the Matrix. I was wondering if it's something like that, but with like Demogorgons and stuff. Or is that like his giant fortress? Like, what is he, like, what other purpose would that be? Because the trail for Holly and the Demogorgon ends there. So whatever it is, that's also got to be where Vecna is, because the moment the Demogorgon and Holly went through, she couldn't sense them anymore, and that's why she hasn't been able to find Vecna. So, is that like his fortress, his like large wall of defense, or does it serve some other purpose? I mean, there's still the big mystery that was brought up last season that we still haven't quite cracked, and I think it's going to come up this season. I'd assume we get a resolution to it, and it's something that it was discovered last season, that time froze in the Upside Down. It's still it's November 6, 1983. The day Will went into the Upside Down, time in this place completely stopped for whatever reason, and we never got a resolution to that mystery last season. So maybe like with the Will stuff this season will give us an answer to that potentially. So I don't know. And maybe this wall has some correlation or connection to it. Like maybe that feeds into the larger mystery. Speaking of Will, obviously his circumstances last episode, this is the worst the situation's ever gotten. Like there's never been this reaction with his visions having such like an electromagnetic like effect on him place. And so Robin's having to kind of repair everything, and Will kind of explains everything to his mom. It's, you know, it's like, right, but we severed that connection to Vecna back in season 2, and it's like, he's like, I don't think it was ever truly like severed. He's like, I felt it when, you know, he came, like when the Mind Flayer came into this world. I felt it when we left. I didn't feel it when we left California, but then the moment we came back and, you know, the Upside Down started bleeding into this world, I felt him. It's like he's getting closer and closer. It's like I can see into him, and that's Joyce's worry. It's like the last time, you know, you stare into the abyss stares back, and it's like Vecna took control of you, he possessed you back in season 2, but it's like that's our only weapon. Like this is the only option we have, because for Will, it's like Holly is alone and scared, and he's like, I know what that's like. I'm never gonna let another person have to go through that again. Especially Holly is like, that's the sister of one of my best friends. She's a young girl that's scared. I know what that's like, and she doesn't like. I never want anyone to ever experience what I experienced, especially if I can do something about it. So he as Robin puts it, he acts as kind of an antenna to Vecna. That it's like, yeah, like what was it, the Mind Flayer, like the particles and stuff like that. Like he can react to him and get close to him, and it sends off a signal. So he wants to, you know, be that signal finder, that antenna, but his mom is telling him not to. So Robin comes up with an excuse, bringing up the flux capacitor. If you are unaware, it's the device for the DeLorean in Back to the Future. But it makes a lot of sense that that Joyce wouldn't know about that, because Joyce she's so busy working. She's a single mom. So like she's spent most of her time working. She doesn't have time just to like watch movies and stuff like that. So, I mean, especially because the kids have actually went to go see Back to the Future in the theaters and stuff like that. So like it makes a lot of sense that like all of that like would like get thrown to the wayside for Joyce. I even love later on when she brings it up. Like you have Steve, Jonathan, and Dustin all being like, what? So they're like, wait, Mom, you know what the flux capacitor is? And it's like, well, she obviously doesn't. So, but I'll get to their side of things in a bit. But I did think about it just when they were leaving, because like Robin's like, yeah, your mom's gonna be mad at me because we're about to do something dangerous. But Will points out the obvious: we're all doing something dangerous. So it's kind of, ask for forgiveness rather than permission type of thing. So, which I also immediately, when they were leaving, I was like, hey, this is a good pairing, because we're getting a lot of pairings this season that we never got previously. Like we're getting kind of the ultimate trifecta of like, we've got Steve, Dustin, and Jonathan, but especially like Jonathan and Steve, which I think that's kind of the great pairings, because, well, Steve and Dustin aren't on the same wavelength this season, because it's just, obviously it's very reminiscent of Lucas and Max last season. She didn't talk about like the guilt she had about the Billy stuff, and she kept it to herself. And Dustin is so angry, and like I think it's not just at other people, it's at himself, not being able to do anything for Eddie clearing his name or anything like that. And so that's eating away at him, and he won't talk to Steve about it. And, and Steve cares. And then obviously Steve and Jonathan got their beef about the whole Nancy of it all, which I'll get to in a second. So, but anyway, going back to the pairing I was talking about, the fact is we had Will and I was literally about to call Maya by her real name instead of like rather than the character's name of Robin. But it's like, oh right, there's a lot to discuss. And so it's like, yeah, Vicky, like she's like, yeah, you were at the hospital. He's like, no, I wasn't. She's like, I could have sworn I saw you. He's like, no, it wasn't me. She's like, yeah, because just in case you did see it. And he's like, we have a good, we're just friends. Someone could misunderstand that, so you need to kind of keep that hush hush. And he's like, nah, it wasn't me. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't see anything. So you're like, but it's like, eventually that conversation is going to come up where he's going to feel comfortable enough to talk to Robin about it, but it's like he's still figuring that out, so he doesn't know. But like it's sparking something there, and obviously Robin's scared because the only person that knows the truth about her and Vicky is Steve. So I don't even know if Nancy knows. Like, she was kind of like hinting to it last season to Nancy, like, oh yeah, like you don't have to worry about me and Steve. She never properly explained it, but I still think Steve's the only one that knows that Robin's gay. So, but Will, like I said, I think he has to figure that stuff out first before him and Robin can circle back to this conversation. So it might be a little while before we go into that. But like I said, I think it's an important thing to know, like, okay, I got to figure it out on my own, but it's kind of nice knowing, like, she's just like me. She's kind of hiding it, but she has that person. She has someone, which is kind of nice, and I kind of want that. And she's comfortable with herself. Obviously, she still has to hide herself, so... yeah, that's good. Like I brought up episode 1, it's going to be some interesting conversations and developments on that front. Circling over to the Steve and Jonathan, like obviously like they got someone that Steve knows to like jumpstart the car, but it turns out it's like he bailed on his girl's sister like multiple times or something like that. Like he obviously we know season 1 Steve was quite the scoundrel. Well, season 1 and prior, Steve was quite the scoundrel. And there's like, it's like, oh, they know about the whole hospital situation with Nancy. And so Steve wants to stop by. He's like, oh, maybe we'll bring her flowers or something. It's like, come on, Steve. Like, even you're like, oh, just for my friend. It's like, no, like, there's definitely more to it. Even Jonathan is right to be like, yo, like, is that all you're thinking about right now? It's like, are you trying to score brownie points? Like, all you've ever done is try to show off about in front of her to make yourself look better than me? Is that all you want? It's like all you can think about right now. It's like, we need to stay the course. And he's like, yada, yada, yada. And he kind of is like, oh, if you want to jump down my throat, it's like, hey, I want to look after my friend. It's like, if you were like a better boyfriend to Nancy, you wouldn't have to worry about like, you instead like you're the one that's miserable. In fact, and he ends up bringing it up like you're the one acting miserable, but the one that's most miserable in the relationship is Nancy. And the moment he says that, the car cranks and we see like the light click on, and you even see that look on Jonathan's face because what Steve is saying, once again, it's the thing of you can think something 1,000 times, but the moment someone points it out, you're kind of like, it hits like tenfold. And so it's a realization that he's had himself, but to have Steve say it out loud cut deep. Because even he's questioning, like, right, is Nancy unhappy being with me? Like, there's a lot of stuff. I wasn't there for Will last season. I wasn't there for Nancy either. I withdrew. I just kind of was like using drugs as my escape. Which actually kind of got me thinking, I'm like, where is Argyle in all of this? Like, did he kind of get back out of like we don't know how long it was before the military swooped in and shut everything down. So Argyle might have been someone that was able to get out of Hawkins before it shut down, like some other people potentially may have. We haven't seen Lucas's family at all. We do see Priya Ferguson, who plays Erica. Her name is in the opening credits, so we just probably haven't seen her so far. But I'd assume, like, aren't they the Sinclairs? Yeah. So I'm sure the entire Sinclair family's still here. They're just probably, like, not in... Well, the fact is we haven't gotten any Erica must mean that they might have gotten out of town, too. So I wonder if that is the case. Like, the fact is we hadn't seen any Erica is really interesting to me, because she'd be neck deep in all of this too. But it could also just be like Lucas wanting her away from all of this. Maybe it could also just be like his family did escape and he wanted Erica away from all this, and maybe Lucas convinced him to say, or maybe she just hasn't gotten involved with this because Lucas has kept her out of the loop. I don't know. Stuff like that. Like I said, maybe even Argyle is here too. I'm curious to see if we'll get any answers on that front. But either way, we also have them running into Dustin, who they're filling in about everything, which Dustin's already got to deal with, like the Andy and all those jocks. Then like the slander against Eddie's name, but now he's got the guilt of I wasn't here, and maybe if I was here, maybe things could have been better. But it's like I've been so caught up in my anger, and they'd even brought it up. It's a line I forgot to talk about last episode, but it was specifically like Mike was making a point of you're trying to fight two battles on one front. You have to choose a battle, and that's fighting Vecna, but you're trying to fight like the town and their belief in Eddie, because, and even Mike said Eddie never cared about what anyone ever thought about him, so like he wouldn't want you wasting your time on this. And it's like, I'm sure that's eating away at Dustin too, where it's like, I wasn't here and maybe I could have helped, maybe someone else could have been nearby to help, but like, you know, because he's the one that tells them like, yo, if something happens, like if there's a surge or whatever, you just simply have to turn off everything and turn it back on. And he kind of making it seem like this is on them for not learning, but it's like he also hasn't been present himself. Once again, a lot of parallels with the Max of it all, where it's just like she wasn't present because she was drowning in her anger, her sadness, and he's doing the same thing and he wasn't there. And I think for him, it's eating away at him like, oh, like, but it's like he can't let go of that anger, and now he's lashing out at others, but he's also taking that out on himself. Especially, once again, just like Steve said something to kind of like cut at Jonathan, what he's saying of like, admit it, Henderson, you messed up. Just admit it this one time. Just admit you screwed up. And he can't admit it because it would also mean in his head, because the thing he feels like he screwed up the most is with Eddie. That's why he's so desperate to fix Eddie's reputation, because it's like, right, it's not fair, but also like I couldn't do anything for Eddie and I was there with him. In fact, Eddie like sacrificed himself and left me to be like, you know, be okay, and like cut off the way, you know, through, like he stood to fight, you know. And he just feels like I let Eddie down, so the only thing I can do is save his reputation, make people like not see him as the monster they make him out to be. But because of that, like that's become his desperate fight, that he's kind of, yes, he's pissed at Vecna, but like I said, his focus has been split, and he's, you know, it's, you know, as they told him in episode 1, and even Steve's like, yo, you poked the bear too many times, because this should have been your priority, but it wasn't, you know. So like I do believe that's eating away at Dustin. So they did pick up a signal, but Dustin was like, it could be like a million things. I'm curious if it is something, because it's like, if it was Hopper, we'd be getting something registered on like the decimals or whatever on the device, on the radio signal, but there's nothing, so it could be other things. But I'm wondering, is it something pertinent that we just don't know about yet? And then finally, we have like the convergence of the Nancy and Mike of it all, as well as the Will and Robin, which I almost made a mistake, just like with the Robin of it all. I was about to call Will by his real name, Noah, you know, so I'm like, I hate when I do that sometimes, when I'm almost like, had to pause and correct myself. I'm like, oh, I'm about to call the character by the actor's real name. But the fact is that while they're in the woods, Will sees like that circle or whatever, and Robin, as her nervous tick is to do, is to kind of like talk endlessly. But then like looking at the spiral, it clicked in his head of like, oh, I know what was happening. It was me. Like he's like, I heard kids laughing, so he knows it's like a playground, and so there's a school nearby. It's Holly's school, and then like what he was seeing was Holly when she was on that the spinny thing, when the kid Derek came to spinning around. That's what he was experiencing. But there's just like, she's like, wait, I thought you were looking through the Demogorgons. He's like, no, but I was seeing through Vecna, and Vecna also, that's how, you know, he sees things through his victim's eyes right before he targets him. But they're like, wait, so he was targeting Holly? They're like, yeah, but the $1,000,000 question is why? And at the same time, Mike and Nancy try, because Mike had clicked in his head when he came across A Wrinkle in Time, and the Mr. What's-It is apparently from that. I've never read A Twinkle in Time. I've never even seen the movie adaptation that came out a couple years ago. But apparently there's a Miss What's-It. So I thought that was just because you couldn't figure out the name. I didn't know that was a direct reference to A Twinkle in Time. Like I said, I've never read the book or seen the movie. But Mike starts wondering, the fact is that she got warned about the monsters. Holly brought up the whole monsters coming after her thing. He's like, there's got to be some correlation. It can't just be a coincidence, like Lucas said. So it's like, okay, so we need to find out who Mr. What's-It is. Maybe he could tell us where Holly is. So Nancy dresses up like a nurse. He dresses up like a patient just so they could get to their mom. She can't talk, but she can write stuff down. So they're like, right, this will help us find Holly. So tell us about Mr. What's-It. And ultimately they break some stuff down about him. And then ultimately, oh, what was his name? And it ends up being Henry. I'm like, I knew it. He's just presenting himself as Henry. Like, he's not presenting himself to her as Vecna. Because I figured that was the case. And also, 11 can visit people, but we also know that's a power Vecna has when he's basically killing people. He basically visits them. Very Sense8 terminology. If you've ever seen Sense8, there's a telepathic connection between people that these people can mentally visit each other and see through each other's eyes and stuff. It's a whole concept. If you've never seen Sense8, it just sounds like gibberish, but it's a very interesting concept that I feel like it's and 11 has kind of done that every time she's used a bath or tub or whatever to search for someone. That's her visiting them. So it's just him doing it, but he's directly interacting with people because 11 has never been able to do that. But maybe that's just because 11's power is Warren or Henry's power has allowed him to do that. So either way, when it's all said and done, now that Mike and Nancy have figured out, holy crap, Henry's someone Vecna's been the one visiting Holly, but why? And then all of a sudden we cut back to Holly, which I think that's he Henry shows her his house, the one where he killed his sister, killed his mom, disfigured his dad disfigured himself to get away from him. But when all those atrocities happened, and essentially Henry was on his, when he first got, for all intents and purposes, kind of awakened as the monster he currently is. But he's bringing Holly there, and he's like, oh, I want to protect all your friends, and I'll save your family afterwards. And that's where the episode ends. So now the question becomes, so it isn't just Holly, he's interested in these kids as well. So there's twofold I'm thinking. My thought was, wait, are we going to find out that Holly has powers or something? Is that what it is? Maybe there's a latent spark in her and all these other kids, and Henry wants to awaken that power in them. Maybe it's something like that. Or maybe he wants to turn them into his generals, because I'm almost wondering, it feels like Vecna is pulling a Brennan here. Because what did he do? He gathered a whole bunch of children and experimented on them. What if Vecna's doing the same thing? He's trying to turn these children into his weapons. It's he's like, oh, I'm going to do what Papa did, but much more, Because he wanted 11 by his side back then before he was Vecna. He kind of gave up on that upon becoming Vecna. But it's right, it's us. We can do this together, but it's no. Now he's instead of 11, because he knows that's a no-go, he's trying to gather all these other children to become his generals. Maybe he's trying to make them into himself. Like I said, maybe there's a latent spark inside of them. If you go by I'm only using an example just because some stuff I've watched recently has kind of dived more, and I'm learning a little bit more about the Stephen King universe, specifically the Shining and Dr. Sleep stuff. But what if he senses something inside of these kids that's similar to The Shine, which is in this case, in this particular series, it's more like that spark that's inside 11 and all these other kids with these powers. Like I said, maybe he's just trying to make an army, and maybe in his own twisted sense, he's trying to make a family of his own. It could be both. I'm trying to make a family while also making an army, while also doing what my father did. It could be, the father that made him pushed him into becoming Vecna, not Victor, his biological dad. that's where my theories are currently. We'll have to wait to see what they actually turn out to be. It's going to be interesting to see what that all ends up leading to. But I'm excited to see what the next episode has in store for us with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. To the next Tell Me, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.